Okay, we're back to Mishlei, and the grand project was that. Oh, let me back up. There are three sections of Mishlei. Okay, roughly. There's chapters 1 through 9, which are the introduction. There's 10 through 24, which we'll call Mishlei Shlomo. Those are the mashalim that Shlomo wrote down. Then chapter 25 through the end could be broadly characterized as one other book, and it's introduced with this phrase, Mishlei Shlomo Shehetiku Anshe Chizkiyahu, the Mishalim of Shlomo that were copied down by the men of Chizkiyahu. So my goal was when I started teaching Mishlei publicly on Zoom in September 2020 was to complete the entire bulk of Mishlei of chapters 10 through 24. So we're at the last chapter now. Okay, what I did is there should be shiurim online of Mishlei's chapters 10 through the end of 16. There's a couple in 15 that we're still doing in the morning, and then 18 through 24. Reason why I saved 17 for last is a weird reason, because if you look here, this is the chapter. These yellow pesukim are the pesukim that I use in my introductory high school Mishlei shiurim. Okay, so as you can see, half the pesukim are like pesukim that I think are worthwhile for beginners to start off with. So I wanted to leave it for last because I've done these a bunch of times and I kind of didn't want to go into them at first. But now we're at this chapter. So the name of the game this year in our Monday Night Mishlei year is going to be try to see chidushim, try to see new ideas. Okay. Now I'm not saying you always have to get a new idea from every Mishlei pasuk, but it's what I aim for. So there are going to be people in this year who are new to Mishlei or newer to Mishlei, and then people who have been learning it for a while. So I'm fine going over the standard ideas for people who are newer because for them that's new. But I want to be pushing the limits, so we're going to be a little bit maybe more creative than usual this season than other seasons. I mean, we're never creative for creativity's sake, but just to try to get something new out of every puzzle. Another thing, excuse me, I just wanted to introduce with here is that because this is a new season and because I know that we do have some people who are joining for the first time, I am going to articulate Mishlei methodology more than I usually do. And so, hopefully no one cares that I'm repeating that. And the third thing I wanted to say is I'm right now not in Far Rockaway, so I don't have my second monitor. So if you have a question, I mean, you should always use the hand feature anyway, raise hand feature, but I'm also not looking at the chat. Okay, so if you put something in the chat, I'm not going to see it. So just, participate verbally. Okay, so the procedure for those who are new is first we translate the pasuk ourselves. Then we look at what I call the minimalist commentators and translators. So these are the people who don't explain the ideas, but who just give us nuances in the words. Then we raise all the questions and problems that we can on the pasuk without answers. Then we come up with our own explanations and answers to the questions, explanations of the pasuk and answers to the questions. Then we delve into the meforshim, into the commentators. Okay, so let us begin. This is Mishlei 17:1, and it says Tov pas chareva v'shalva ba mi bayis male zivche riv. Okay, so would anyone like to try to translate that? Just jump in. No one? Oop, I heard someone on mute.
Better is bread of the sword? No.
No. Charev. You know charev? Chareva?
Sweet?
Nope, opposite almost.
It's bitter.
Nope, but it is on the bitter side. Bitter is a dry bread. Okay, we'll use dry for now. I think that's a little bit for debate. In fact, stale bread is probably a better translation. Okay, so we'll go with stale for now, but we'll see what the meforshim say. Yeah, vishalva ba.
With and tranquility in it.
Okay, and tranquility in it. Okay, now you translated it the way I translated, which is tranquility. You see here that the BDB dictionary says quietness and ease. So I'm going to put those also, quietness and ease. And I'm going to make this transliteration here so we can work with that. Okay, so better is stale or dry bread and shalva in it. Mi bayis mali zivche riv.
Then a house full of offerings, but I don't know if that's literal translation
Okay,
of
I think that's probably the most literal.
contention.
Okay, of contention. Okay, good. Okay, so let me point out a few things here. First of all, you did not fall into the trap that people usually fall into, which is when you have the word tov and a mem, then you don't translate. Tov is usually good, but if it's tov blank may blank, then it's better X than Y. Okay, so you translated that correctly. Um, Anyone else want to venture any alternate translations before we look at the minimalist commentators here? Like words that you would translate differently? There is another translation of Zevach, which most of the meforshim actually are going to use. Anyone know another translation of Zevach other than offerings or sacrifices?
Thinking about different pasuk, like I'm not thinking about like necessarily the etymology, but I was thinking just meat. Like
Yeah,
or is that just a different pasuk completely? Like that it's better
yeah. No, so that is the that is another meaning here, and I'm guessing just what happened here is that in the olden days, then people would really primarily eat meat that was brought for offerings, and then so it probably transferred to mean like meat as a korban to just meat in general. Okay, so we'll see that. All right, now let's look at the minimalist mefarshim in translation. So we've got Metzudas Sion, who says, Pas is chatichas lechem. It means a piece of bread. Okay, so not bread. I know we are used to saying pas means bread because we say pas Yisrael, but in biblical Hebrew, it means a piece of bread. Okay, so better is a piece of stale bread. And then he says chareva is yavesha, so he says dry. Okay, that's Metzudas David. The Targum Sadia Gaon, who is the translator of Mishlei into Arabic, and then we have a translation from Rav Kafach back into Hebrew, says Zivche Riv is Zvachim B'Riv. So offerings in contentiousness. Okay, I'm going to actually put this here. Or in contentiousness. Okay. I'm not sure if there's something grammatical making him say that or if that's like interpretive. Okay, Targum Ksuvim, I'm probably going to ignore, but we'll read it anyway. Tavehi lachma sharivta v'shalvasa ba min besa demalis divche didiana. I think those are just like literal translations. Okay, Malbim says pas hu haparus. That's also a portion of bread or a piece of bread. Como pitos pesos osa pitim. V'hashalim nikra lechem. So he says that you call the whole loaf lechem, but you call the piece pas. Okay, chareva, he says below tibul, without what's the word? Like dips or garnish, I guess. Without so he says dry bread. I'll just put this here, okay? Or bread, a piece of bread without dips. Okay. Shalva is Geder Hashalva hi mirgoa hanefesh v'shalom hapnini. So he says shalva. The definition of shalva is the repose or the resting of the soul and inner peace. Okay, so I think that's captured in the word in the English word for what do you call it, for tranquility. So I don't think we need to like incorporate that into a translation. Okay, so then I'm just going to move this up here. Art Scroll says better a dry piece of bread with peace in it than a house full of contentious celebrations. Okay, so that's interesting. So they really go with zevach, meaning like the occasion, not just the food. So I'll put that there. And then Rav Hirsch says better dry bread with peacefulness in it than a house full of meals eaten in strife. Okay, so that's also just a very generic translation of zevach. That one I'm a little sketchy about. I feel like it's a little sketchy. And then Koren, I forgot to bring altar here, says better is a dry morsel and quietness with it. I don't know where they get, I guess you could translate ba is with it. I get, maybe the reason why they're saying with it is because if you're taking the metaphor to be bread without dips, so then instead of dips, like in place of dips, you have tranquility, maybe that's why they're saying with. So I'm going to say in or with it. Okay. Then a house full of feasting with strife. Okay, so feasting is like celebrations. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is for the sake of the chat, yeah, hold on one second. I'm just going to post this in the chat so people can consult it whenever they want. And yeah, Rick, you have something before we do the questions? We have a question. I mean, you must have a question, or you're frozen.
Yeah, a pre-question.
Okay, go ahead. Pre-question.
Oh no, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, my
You're a little
pre-question
laggy, but
was sorry.
just keep going.
About translation that I never thought of this before, which I'm like surprised I never thought of it, in the years that you've been learning, have you translated differently and then gotten like a different like result for an idea?
Yeah, okay. So my Mishlei Rabbi Moskowitz would all whenever we were confronted with two translations, he would always say, choose the more difficult translation because you'll get better ideas. Okay. He would, no, in other words, he would force the difficult reading so that we would get new ideas. So that's definitely a method we could use for chapter 17. I'm not opposed to that at all. So can I think of times when I've done it? Probably, but none come to mind offhand. Okay, good pre-question. Okay, now let's go with questions here. Who has questions? And again, use the hand raise feature because I don't have my second monitor tonight. Yeah, Ariel.
Seems pretty obvious.
Okay, so this is what we call the classic Ariel question. Okay, this comes up in Mishlei, in the morning Mishlei sometimes, which is that Ariel thinks pesukim are obvious that I don't think are obvious. Okay, so we'll put it down. Okay, you want to articulate why you think it's obvious, or is it so obvious that you can't
Well,
articulate it?
yeah. I'll start off with using your words against you in your
Ah,
introduction.
okay,
Okay, it seems like that whatever idea we give here will be so obvious that like there needs to be a deeper explanation because we've had similar pesukim to this before,
yeah,
and yeah, of course, you should take something small to have a peaceful life than have
yeah.
so much wealth and have a miserable life.
Okay,
That
so
that to
okay,
me is obvious in
okay.
Mishlei. So like, what is it
So
adding
this
here?
is so I'm glad. So okay, I feel like this is we have to make a distinction now. There's two kinds of obvious that we encounter in Mishlei. One type of obvious is where it doesn't sound like it's saying anything, like it's not. It's just like a tautology. Like it's just like like I'm trying to think of an example of this. Oh yeah, my favorite example of this is there's a puzzle that says the second half says "Ivelas ksilim ivelas." The foolishness of fools is foolish. Okay, and you're like, what is that supposed to teach you? Obvious. What the foolishness of fools is smart. So that's like the one kind of obvious. But what Ariel's saying is this is like the cliche type of obvious, okay? Where it's like this is the type of thing you find in a fortune cookie. So we have to see past the fortune cookie thing, all right? So that I'll accept. Okay, so what is the new idea beyond the fortune cookie slash, and I'm gonna insult a bunch of places now, slash um I'm gonna call it simple seminary idea. Okay. And the reason why I say simple seminary idea, and you guys who've gone to seminaries tell me this, I've had people who have told me, oh, I've learned Mishlei before. And I say, oh, and then they tell me what their Mishlei learning experience is, and it's just like reading fluff. I don't know if you've experienced that, but like it is a sad thing that like it's all just like fluff, or I might have said this before. My chavrusa and I, in my first year of yeshiva, had a Pirkei Avos chavrusa, and as the year went on, like we didn't know anything. As the year went on, we just realized like, oh, we're just projecting onto the text all of the ideas we already know. So then we switched to calling it projection chavrusa, so that it would spur us to like try to actually like find real ideas. So I feel like it's just very easy if you and I'm not trying to call anyone out here. If something immediately jumps to your mind when you saw this, you're wrong. Okay, so like that's the type of idea that Ariel's trying to get away with this. Okay, so that's the bar that we're setting here. Okay, now everyone's gonna be afraid to speak when we do the ideas, but that's fine. Okay,
Good.
Shmuel, you're up. Yeah, Shmuel.
Thanks, Rabbi. I have a question.
Yeah.
So my question is, how does shalva, or tranquility, quietness, and or ease, how does that relate to the bread and
Okay.
its state of being?
Great question. Okay, so what is the relationship between shalva and shalva and the piece of bread? Okay, and we'll split that into a linguistic question, which is, do we translate it as in or with the bread? And either way, what does that mean, right? You can't, shalva. Let's shalva isn't a condiment or an ingredient. Okay. Although I'm now envisioning a line of Michelin condiments, maybe we can start this business going here. But yeah, okay. So that clearly does seem to be metaphorical. Okay. Next is Rifki.
Yeah, so specifically with the bread, I'm wondering what does the dryness add to it? Like meaning
Right.
like with bread is great. But yeah, what does it add? What are we supposed to learn?
Sorry, what quality of bread is being identified here, and who cares? Okay, right. So is it yeah, and that's by, is it dry? Is it stale? Is it un that was the other one, right? Let's say ungarnished. I know garnished is probably the wrong word for it, but I'm trying to get across the Malbim's thing. Yeah. Okay, good. Avital and crew.
All right, Vishnu, guys.
Hey.
2 questions.
Yeah.
First of all, this is something I think we've brought up in past year, and whenever we use the word tov, it's like A
Yeah.
is better than B. It's better for or better in terms of. So I'll need
Yeah,
to define
good.
that for
So
this.
better in what sense, or by what metric? Good.
Mhm. And then the second one I had is in terms of what's being compared, you'd
Yeah.
think it would be like the bread being compared to the meat, but instead
Yeah.
it's comparing the bread to the house.
Okay,
So
good.
just in terms of the parallel from the first part to the second part, why is it that like the focus or the object of the sentence is changing?
Okay, good. So I'm gonna broaden that and then use that as an example. So how are the two halves opposites, and how do we account for the asymmetry? Okay, for example, the bread is not being compared to the meat, but to the house. Yeah. Okay, good.
I just
Yeah.
had one also.
Yeah, sure.
Just in terms of like the decision making, like you could say like 2 scenarios are like one is better than the other, but in terms of being actually specific in the decision making, like what is that?
Okay, good. So this is another one of our standard questions, which we never want to ask as a gut question, because then we don't think about it, but you're asking it from the actual thing, which is, what decision-making scenario is this describing? Okay, and this is a methodological premise that I have in approaching Mishlei here, which I got from my Rebbe, which is that Mishlei is a book that trains you how to make intelligent decisions in everyday life. Or at least intelligent decisions, maybe not in practical life, but intelligent decisions. It's a decision-making book. Unlike, for example, Pirkei Avos, which sometimes just purely talks about character traits, Mishlei is focused on the decisions. So either every pasuk needs to be describing a decision-making scenario, or we need to be translating it into a decision-making scenario. So that's what Avital is getting at here. Okay, Ayala.
So I think this could fall under question 4 or 6, but just a little bit more nuance.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have the bread, or actually the house full of meat, with shalva? Or like, I guess
Oh,
like,
that's interesting. Okay,
is
I think
it-
that, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just wondering like how those two are connected. Is it like necessary that you have like, or is it just trying to highlight that like shalva is better than contentiousness, and like
Right.
even if you're having poor conditions?
Okay, I feel like this deserves its own question, but I'm kind of undecided about how I want to formulate it. So let me try one formulation, and you guys can tell me if this is a good formulation here, which is, are these mutually exhaustive options? In other words, is the choice, are the choices only, I'll capitalize it, only bread plus shalva and house of meat versus contention? Sorry, plus contention. Okay. Oops, sorry. Or are there in betweens? Okay. Like bread plus contention and house of meat with plus shalva. Okay. So if it's the former, why are those the necessary pairings? And if it's the latter, what do we say? Sorry, if the latter are options, what do we say about those? What would the pasuk say about those? What would the pasuk say about those? And why only mention these extremes? Does that cover your question, or are you asking something else?
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
mean.
good. All right, Isaiah.
Are Shalva and Riv opposites? It seems to me like Riv is Ben Adam Lamak, like between 2 different people, but
Yeah.
Shalva is like could be, could not be,
Okay.
or like Yeah, how is
Okay.
that being compared to riv?
Good question. So I'm going to actually go ahead and unpack that into 3 questions here. So what is shalva in this context? Okay, and those who were in my Pirkei Avos shiur on Thursday know that we learned the word shalva to mean something that it clearly doesn't mean here. Okay, in Thursday night, we learned shalva. Sforno learned shalva to mean prosperity, okay, or making money to earn a living without any trouble. Here, like, it does not seem to mean prosperity, you know? So, like, you can have different definitions of shalva. So, what is shalva? And then what is, let me put this down over here. What is riv? Okay, I'm gonna say riv. And then, um, and then I'm gonna put this question into Yitzi's question, which is, are shalva and riv opposites? Shalva sounds whenever I type those words, I automatically start typing shall have it. It's a long ingrained thing. Shalva seems to be something you can have internally, whereas riv seems to require other people. Is that what you meant, Isaiah, or what you said? I know what you said for riv, but I missed what you said for shalva.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, Rifki.
Yeah, so Avital's question made me think of this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about who exactly is involved in this. Like, could it be everyone and anyone? Because there's just no
Right.
specific character here.
Right. And who is involved? So I'm going to split that into 2 questions. Who's involved in the scenario? Right, because it seems like it's more than just one person, especially for the second part. And then I'm going to ask our standard question for that last part, which is who is the intended audience of this pasuk? And this is another methodological tool that we got from my Rebbe, which is that there are some pesukim that talk to everybody, but typically you can narrow it down to a certain kind of person. Okay, it doesn't always say. And I'm going to add what Rifki said here and who's involved in the scenario, given that this doesn't identify any Mishleic archetypes. Yeah, Yair. Unless you just accidentally hung up. Oh, no, you're there. I can't hear you though. You're muted.
Sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So I was thinking. So the first Barris piece of stale, dry, ungarnished bread and shalva seems like, as you said, bread plus shalva. But I feel like the second one, I don't know if it feels maybe less parallel like that. But when saying a house full of meat offerings, whatever, of riv, like I feel like that's more one thing than two. Like you would say it's plus contention, or I'd say it's more just a house full of the meat. I guess I'm just seeing the like of, and I'm taking that as it's one thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you're getting caught up on the of, but filled, I guess, full.
Like I don't see the like and separation. I feel like it's more part of it.
Yeah, zivche riv, male zivche riv, filled with contentious offerings. I'm not sure if I understand your question. Try one more time.
What I'm saying is I was seeing the part about like you're saying there's like the first one is bread plus shalva.
Oh,
and
I know what you're
then
saying. Let me try
house
this.
plus, or
Are you
whatever,
saying
house of meat plus contention?
right? In other words,
saying,
it's,
I think house of meat and like of contention is all one thing.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that the bread and the shalva are 2 different things, but house filled with meat of contention is like one thing. It's not this plus that.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's just if the wording felt like it's more connected.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I'm going to tack that onto the question about the opposites, which is the first half is identifying 2 things, bread plus shalva, but the second half seems to be talking about one thing, a house filled with contentious meat. Yeah, I can see it both ways, but I definitely can see where you're getting it from, contentious meat. And I think in the Hebrew it's even better because riv is being used as an adjective to describe the meat, but shalva is not being described as an adjective. It's used as a noun. So noun as opposed to noun qualified by adjective. That's a good linguistic observation. Yeah, Racheli.
This is more of a question on question one, which is
Yeah.
like I never learned Mishlei before. So what is a Mishleic archetype?
Good question. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the details, but I will show you the Mishlei spectrum. Okay. Mishlei spectrum. Okay, so this is something that my Rebbe and I were going to write a book on. Okay, but Mishlei talks about different personality types over and over and over again. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just the many of the common ones. And we organized it on a spectrum. So in the middle, which is the most neutral person in Mishlei, is the Na'ar, is the youth. So Shlomo Hamelech wrote Mishlei, and he's talking to, he says, my son. And that's either his literal son, or more likely it is his student, okay, because students are considered the offspring of their teachers, okay. Then on developing in the good direction, you have the Tam, okay, who in Mishlei is someone who is lacking in bad midos, bad character traits, but he has not developed his wisdom yet. Arum is someone who's cunning, which is a special quality, which I'll show in a little while. Chacham is someone who makes decisions based on the consequences. Navon is someone who has an understanding of how systems work and can deduce or induce things. Yashar is someone whose emotions are perfected to the point where they naturally desire the good and their mind naturally desires stuff. Tzaddik is someone who cares about the system. So he's thinking long-term in terms of the system, and then Chassid is beyond Mishlei. These are like our working definitions here. Pesi is someone who is the most innocent of the Mishleic fools. So it's a gullible simpleton. So Shlomo says, Pesi yamin l'chol davar. Pesi believes everything. So he makes bad decisions, but it's because he is duped into things by other people or by his own Yetzer Hara. Atzel is a lazy person, someone who is averse to immediate pain and conflict. Avil is someone who thinks superficially and does not think in depth and is attracted to superficial pleasure. Xil is someone who believes that the world revolves around him and like expects reality to do that. Arum is also a type of Russia, like the snake in Bereshis. Late is a scoffer and a mocker who's arrogant and malicious. Bogade is someone who, I forgot what our working definition of Bogade is. We've revised that over the years. Belial is someone who's a lawless person, and then Russia is someone who's like trying to dominate the system. So these are, so what you do when you learn Mishlei is you encounter these terms, and then each pasuk gives you a different idea about who that person is. And as you go on, you start to develop definitions like the ones that I just spit out here. But the reason why Mishlei talks in archetypes is because real people are complicated. But in order to learn about people, if you have a like pristine model that embodies this one trait, it's easier to talk about them. And then you could talk about them in their pure forms. And then you start to see them in the complex world around you. So what Rifki was pointing out is that you look at, for example, Mishlei chapter 10, which is what we started off with. Every pasuk has these archetypes in it. So Chacham, fool; Tzaddik, Rasha; Ramia, that's a cheaty person; and Charutz is a diligent person. Maskil, intelligent person; Mavish, shameful son; Tom, and Ma'akesh Drachav, someone who walks with integrity, someone who twists his ways. So these are all like Mishlei jargon. These are like archetypes. But our pasuk doesn't say anything like that. It's just talking about bread and meat. So that's what Mishlei archetypes are. So that was a little bit of a deviation from our pasuk, but it's a good Mishlei methodology question, so I'm glad you asked it. Okay, I feel like we're still missing. I can think of a couple questions that we're missing. Yeah, Ariel?
Do we ask what the subject of this pasuk is?
No. Okay, so this is another Rabbi Moskowitz question, which is, what is the subject of this pasuk? Which means that just like we assume that every Mishlei pasuk is about a certain decision-making scenario, and depending on how you learn the decision, then you might come up with a different idea. So too, every pasuk is about a certain topic or a certain a certain theme. Okay, and depending on how you learn it, you'll get a different idea. And for here, I'm going to quote my favorite example, which I've quoted before. And I'm not going to say the idea, but there's a pasuk in 24, 26. Yeah. 26:13. Amar Atzel Shachal Badarech Ari Ben Arachovos. No. Whoa, that's a different one. Hold on. I didn't realize that was another pasuk. There's a very similar sounding pasuk to that. Amar atel ari bachutz. Yeah, here we go. Amar atel ari bachutz besok ruchos eratzeach. The lazy person says, "There's a lion outside. I will be murdered in the streets." Okay, so if you just saw this pasuk, and I asked you what the subject is, you would think it's a pasuk about laziness. Okay, and there are many who learn it about laziness. But when Rabbi Moskowitz and I learned it, we learned that it was not a pasuk about laziness. It was a pasuk about rationalization, and it was using the lazy person as an example. Okay, that the lazy person will come up with with rationalizations that are so far-fetched that they don't even realize it because they're not thinking. Their mind is being hijacked by their emotions. So saying that I'm going to be murdered by a lion outside in the olden days, it would be like saying I don't want to go outside because I might get hit by a plane. Like it's possible, but it's not really likely. So Ariel's question forces us to ask, what is the subject? So, for example, I'm not going to say examples here, but I'll say, is this about food? Is this about wealth? Is this about peace? Is it about something else? And depending on what you say the subject is, you might come out with a different idea. Okay, Rifki.
So I know like generally Mishlei, works on extremes. So like that's the way we can able to glean an idea. But I'm wondering like is there like a Benoni here? Like I feel like, these are very extreme examples, but I would think that most households and most like families don't really operate like this.
Okay. So this is another question, which I don't know if any of you were with me when we were learning this way. So my former Mishlei Chavrusa, current Tehillim Chavrusa, Ken and I developed a theory called the middleman theory of Mishlei. Okay. And the middleman theory is that all the pesukim talk about extremes. And one of the things we have to do is we have to define the middleman. Lately, the reason why I jettisoned that approach was not because it was a bad question, but because I think I like pairing it with 11. Okay, but I'll make it a new question here, which is these are extremes. Okay, what does the middle? Okay, that's what we're using Benoni. I don't know if that's in your mind because of the season.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What does the middle person look like? Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Shmuel.
I'm stuck thinking about your translation of contention,
Yeah.
contentiousness.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, maybe this was already said and I didn't read closely enough. But what does contentiousness have to do with a meal or with
Okay.
a house even? Like where does that even fit into the pasuk?
Okay. Yeah. So I think we did not ask the parallel of that question for 6. So 6, we asked about the shalva and the bread, but now we got to ask, what is the relationship between the house filled with meat and the quality of riv? Okay, like what does that even mean, and why? What prompts or necessitates this pairing? Okay, and I say prompts or necessitates because acknowledging question about are these mutually exhaustive options? Okay, so good question. All right, next is my dad.
Are we assuming that contentiousness is always bad?
That's a good question. Okay, yeah.
With someone about different points of view, intellectuals, and it can be a beneficial thing.
Okay, good. So what you're asking is, I'm going to ask this in the way. This is the one question I was waiting for, and because I'm waiting for it, I'm going to ask it in the stronger form, which is we ask better in what sense or by what metric. But what you're really asking is like, is it really better? Like, what's so bad about contentiousness?
Mhm.
Who says it's worse than a dry piece of bread with tranquility? Okay. Yeah. All right. You had your hand up. Was that going to be your question?
No, I mean, I don't think this is a revolutionary question by any means, but I felt shouldn't be said. Like, I mean, you can say this about anything, but why specifically are we saying bread?
Okay,
Like,
good.
why are we using the specific?
Okay,
these
good. No, I was
specific
waiting for
words?
someone to
You
ask
can
that
say
question.
that about anything. So
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no. You could say that about anything, but I do think that, let's say if the pasuk were really about peace and contentiousness, he didn't have to express it in meal terms. He could have used, like there are other pesukim, for example, about being with a contentious, husband and wife, or like being in a contentious, like friendship. So I think that is worth asking. Okay, so let me put this. I'm going to put this near the subject here. I'm going to tack it on, even though I do think it's a good independent question. Um, why, I guess, and regardless of what subject it is, why focus on food? Yeah. All right. Avital gang.
Yeah, this is a methodological question about the
Yeah.
middleman theory. It's a little off topic, then I guess we can talk about another time.
Sure.
But I'm wondering, like, if the pasuk is presenting two extremes and there's a middle, so
Yeah.
are we saying that the middle is kind of weaving together someone who has both of those in them, or is the middleman theory saying that there's like a qualitative different third person? Meaning, if you have a
Good
middle, it
question.
can be like it's a combination of the two, but it's not like any new category. It's not like a chidushim in that way.
Right.
Or it could be like the being in the middle means that there's something qualitatively different about you.
Right. So we've seen, I think, 4 possibilities here. Okay. There are cases where the middle unstated thing is actually a different quality. We've seen cases where the middle is developmentally pulled in both directions. And by understanding the pull, then we can better harness the idea in decision making. We've seen cases where there is no middle, and that's why the pasuk is stating in the extremes. Maybe those are the only cases. Yeah, I think those are the only cases that I can remember, but who knows? Yeah, it's a good question. We should be on the lookout for that this year. Let's have that. Let's do this this year. We'll hold each other mutually responsible to try like testing out the middleman theory and see what happens. Okay, and we'll just see where it goes. Okay, we'll just have it be on our radar. Okay, Shlomo.
Yeah, but the question I have is that the way this reads is it reads as if it's involving more than one person.
Yeah.
But my question is that can it involve internally?
Okay, good.
Dealing with ourselves.
Okay, good. So where did we write about that was in Isaiah. Oh yeah, other people. So I'm gonna put here, yeah, that should be its own question. Hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna make it its own question. So I'll put this near the decision-making scenario question. So does this really need to involve other people, or could this be applied to purely internal strife and conflict? Sorry, not strife and conflict. Shalva and conflict. By the way, strife is another translation here, or strife or quarreling. Yeah, Racheli? Unless you,
I
Libby,
think
yeah.
I'll ask, but I don't know if this really makes sense.
Okay.
I just realized that it's comparing the bread to the house, but I was
Yeah.
gonna ask like why it's a singular bread and like plural meat. But then I realized if it's comparing.
No, that's actually a good question. I think I'm going to put that in the asymmetry question. Okay, which is, why is bread singular and meats plural? Okay, meats or offerings plural. Okay, good. Okay, I think we got all the questions now. Okay, so let me do what I always do and narrate what I'm doing as I do it. So first of all, I'm going to copy the translation because we added a little bit. Then I'm going to copy the questions here. And what's going to follow from this is what we call the thinking minute. And guess what we do during the thinking minute? We try to think of explanations. Okay, but hold on, this is not going to transfer in one shot. But I'm going to pose a challenge here, okay? And those of you who have learned Mishlei with me before know this, is what's the, I'll ask you, okay? What's my general inclination about taking pesukim metaphorically? Who wants to try saying the methodology that we got from Rabbi Moskowitz for that? Yeah, Isaiah?
Okay, this is just my sense.
Sure.
Is that you would rather do that after we've developed more literal ideas, and then if there's something we can gain from metaphorical approach, then that's good. Like secondarily.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I saw my dad raised his hand. Do you have an answer to that question?
I think it's the same thing. Is that you try to avoid the metaphors unless you really have no other.
Okay, that's exactly, yeah. Okay, that's close to the way I say it, even though Isaiah is right. So the approach to Mishlei that I was taught by my Rebbe is you take the pasuk as literally as possible, and you only take it as a metaphor when you're forced to. Okay. Now, I think there are. I think the main reason for this is because once you open the doors to metaphor, it's very easy to just say whatever you feel like saying, and then just again project it into the pasuk. And it lends itself to a very undisciplined type of thinking. Okay. Now, there is a metaphorical layer of Mishlei, which we will explore tonight, I hope. But that comes, like Isaiah was saying, after we've done the literal, because the that's my understanding of it, is that the metaphors are built on the literal interpretation. So when you are interpreting this, I want you to try to think as literally as possible. Okay. Rifki, you have a question before we start the thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, can you remind me, while you were explaining that, who's the meforsh that does like a literal and then like a more esoteric?
Yeah, so the Meiri
The Erie,
always
right.
does two interpretations. Sometimes he says that there is a close relationship with the two, where he says that here, but the Meiri always does two, and that's actually based on a pasuk in Mishlei, which is, I think it's in 24. Hold on, 23, 22, 21. Nope. 26, 27. Hold on. I'm gonna find it. 25. Okay. Tapuche zahav b'maskios kasef davar davur al ofanav, like golden apples encased in silver lattice work, is a statement that's said properly. Okay. So what you should picture here. Actually, I think I made an image of this. Golden apples. Or I tried. This was at an earlier iteration. Oh no, I didn't. Okay, fine. All right. Lattice work is like, like picture like a chain link fence kind of. So silver outside with gold inside. So the Rambam explains that to mean, and not just the Rambam, but the Rambam is I think the earliest source I know, that there's two layers of Mishlei. There's the outer silver level, which is applying Mishlei to everyday decision making. And then if you look closely, you'll see things that are a little like off. And that points you to the golden level, which is applying Mishlei to the development of your soul. Okay. And that's what the Meiri calls the derech nigla, which is the external meaning, and then the derech nister, which is the internal meaning. And so we always try to go for the silver before we get to the gold, because you have to go through the silver lattice work to get to the gold. Avital, you also have a pre-question yeah, go ahead.
I was just for clarification, when we were saying, I forgot exactly who said this, but how like the first part is kind of all singular with the one piece of bread, and like shalva like could mean tranquility like just within oneself. But the
Yeah.
second part where it's all plural, the house of meat, I get, but why can't the contention also be singular?
No, I thought that's what Shlomo was asking, is like maybe the whole thing is only talking about one person and it's all internal. But the words zivche is that part is plural, but maybe it could be all internal to the person.
Okay, like
Yeah.
meaning like internal strife, I would think it would be like plural. Yeah, I guess in general, I would think that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it depends on how you're gonna take the rest of it. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna take our thinking minute, okay? And the mission is come up with an explanation that is the most literal possible. Okay. So if anyone starts off by saying, I want to say that bread is a metaphor for, I'm gonna cut you off, okay? Because we don't want to hear those right now. Okay. So try and make it as literal as possible. And then specifically for Avital, Rivki, Ayala, Shmuel, I think if you did learn this with me, and I don't know if you did, if you did learn this with me and you know what I'm going to say from before, let me say it, because I want to come up with a chiddush, but I also know the idea really well because I teach it in every Mishlei class. So don't say my idea, okay? Yeah. Okay, so let's take our thinking. Ario, is it you're just first in line?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so let's take our thinking minute. Okay.
I'm having trouble remembering if this is my idea or your idea.
Okay, that happens. Okay, so I'll let you say it, and
No, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna
Okay,
say it.
okay.
I second
I
that
have the
also.
exact same thing with Ryan Moskowitz. It's yeah. Okay. Especially the first ideas in Mishlei that you hear,
Yeah,
they take root in your mind before you've like developed Mishlei as a discipline. So like you don't know if it's like a
that's what
yeah.
I'm gonna say. Like we learned this in 2018 or 27. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy. It's been a while now. Okay, Ariel, you're up.
Yeah, so I want to say that I think maybe the subject of this pasuk has to do with whether or not you have like tranquility or or contentiousness in your household. And you know and I think a stale piece of bread versus meat has to do with material abundance, like
Okay.
material meaning, like it's funny that the puzzle doesn't use the term like wealth, like if you're an usher
Yeah.
or if you're poor. So it got me thinking about like, okay, so maybe it has to do with the fact that like maybe on a psychological level, because I think meat, food in general is supposed to like make you feel, like tranquil. You have a good meal, like you feel good. And especially I think like even back in the day, like meat was more of like a luxurious
Yeah.
food.
Right.
So when you have meat, when you have like a house filled with meat and like that nice piece of juicy steak, you
Yeah.
know, like you have like a certain sense of like, a psychological security of which makes you feel like at peace. It almost makes you feel like you're not only do you have the wealth in your bank account, but you're experiencing that lifestyle, right? But
Okay.
bread, a stale piece of bread, it doesn't really satisfy that state, right? So I think when you have a lot of you know um strife or contentiousness,
Yeah.
I think it could sully that. I think it could really put you in a state of, a state of mind where you can't even enjoy your material, abundance of wealth.
Okay. So I'm hearing a mixture of things here. So let me try. I kind of lost you early on. So let me try saying what I'm hearing, and you tell me where I'm getting it wrong or where I'm getting it right. So you're saying that what people really, so people do try to get like delicacies and like a level of luxury, but what they're actually striving for is a certain psychological state of tranquility or whatever you want to call that, whatever the shalva is. So the thing is that it doesn't come from the actual, it's not inherent to the meat. It's something that they're striving for via the meat, and therefore if you have contentiousness in your household, it's going to prevent you from being able to achieve that.
Uh, yeah, and it's interesting you're using you kind of. I don't know if I was saying this or not, but I don't see why it would be a problem about like people striving for it specifically.
Yeah.
I don't really know, but I'm not opposed to it because I also do think that like it's possible that like if you are in a state of contentiousness as well, maybe you might think, oh, you know what, maybe if I just have more of it, it'll just ease the pain or like whatever you're feeling or whatever it is, and you won't mind it so much. But
Okay.
Michelle's
Right.
come to teach you that that's not the case. Like it'll never get better.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get this down here. People are trying to reach a state of psychological shalva, and they believe that that material luxuries, or maybe material is the wrong word, but like, I guess they say like luxuries, delicacies, opulence, etc., can get them there. Okay, but the pasuk is telling you that those things, that shalva, sorry, that shalva doesn't isn't intrinsic to that standard of living, okay, and can be like precluded by contentiousness in the house. Okay,
Yeah,
is
it
that
still feels a little too obvious though,
okay? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's on the way to something though. And here's the other thing also, and I'm gonna throw this question out here. No, I'm not gonna throw it out here. I'm just gonna say this. Right now, it feels a little bit more like a Koheles idea. Okay, but I mean, I could see it being Mishleified. Okay, yeah, but and then did you have a positive idea for the bread with the tranquility in it?
Oh
Or
yeah, I
yeah,
did. I think that like, well, I think it's kind of like the opposite. Like if you let's say you're in an environment where like there's no one like, oh, there isn't any strife whatsoever. Like it's very peaceful, it's calm, and it's almost like the company that you have is great. Like that environment that you're in, the atmosphere is
yeah,
fantastic. Like it may like even eating that piece of stale bread may can give you like that psychological fill of you know you know well, I don't know. I think it'll create. It's like the environment is so powerful that you won't even care about what you're eating in a sense.
okay. Or you won't care about what you're eating. Okay, I think that's so. I think I agree with you that I crave a little bit more of a chiddush, a little bit more of a new insight. But I do think that's a good interpretation of the pasuk, and it's actually very close to my idea on the pasuk. Okay, so I'm gonna hold off on this developing this more, and we'll circle back to it when I say my idea. Okay, let's go to Yair.
I have, I hopefully this will be quick. I don't actually agree with my translation,
Okay,
like the idea it's presenting that I think it is. But what I think it's saying, at least how I interpret it, is so it's like better, very literal. It's better to have like a little bit of like stale dry bread, like boring bread, but just like a calm, unchanging environment, rather than like as we said, meat is very rare, like rather than have all this fanciness, but like chaos, like change, better to, which I disagree with, but I think it's saying like better to have a simple thing. It's something not just like very, very bland, simple, but unchanging, just quiet, as opposed to like something perhaps with more, I don't know what's called, potential. I don't know exactly, like just as quite literally just more like meat, like more fancy, tasty, exotic food, but with it chaos. And I don't think I agree with that.
Okay, so
That's
first of
my
all, the thing I like most about what you're saying is methodologically speaking, what you're doing is very good, okay, which is trying to ask what the pasuk is telling you and setting aside whether you agree with it or not, because oftentimes what happens is you disqualify or you embrace ideas based on your liking of them, and it taints your objectivity in your analysis. So I think being able to do that is a very good quality, and I'm glad that you're doing that now. I think the thing that I would want to, I think that my two problems with the idea. So I'm gonna say just say problems to consider. Okay, this is hold on. Problems to consider. So one is Yair doesn't agree with this idea. Okay, so you have to convince yourself or see like is this does this have merit? Two, I still want to know better in terms of what. Okay, I feel like unless that question is answered, then we don't really have the idea. And then the third thing is this feels a little too metaphorical for me. I almost said metaphorical, metaphorical for me. Um, for my taste. Okay, so that might be a taste thing. Okay, for me. But so those are points for you or anyone else to consider for now. Okay, so you can work on that. And we'll circle back if you need if you have more ideas. Okay, Isaiah, you're up.
Okay. I definitely had an idea before. I'm trying to think of it now. But
I can
so
come back if you want, whatever you prefer.
the thing with this thing is that it's better to have like if wealth, chasing after wealth, and it could be bread literally, but I'm taking bread here as wealth, is going to be something that's going to create like is going to create contention within your house. So that is going to be something that particular thing is not like worth chasing after. It's not worth it to have the thing in your house that's going to like be a source of contention. And I think the reason is because like not only is it like driving you down this like bad path of chasing after wealth, you know, in favor of like having peace in your house, but it's also going to like it's going to always be there as a source of contention. Like if you're like choosing wealth over spending time with your family, or choosing to be like less good in your house but you get wealth, so then that choice is going to like exist in your house, and people who are around you are going to like be affected by it. So it's better to like have a little bit less wealth, but have like, you know, the bitter bread or whatever is going to be signified to that, but have like tranquility with the people around you, because like there's not going to be that item there that's like going to be a source of contention. It's not like a one-time thing. It's like a continuous thing.
Okay, so that's an interesting idea. I'm gonna actually try leading with an example, and I want to re-extract the idea from the example here, if the example works out. So what I'm thinking of here is the mafia household. Okay, so if you are a mafia guy, so you are making a decision to enter into a life where you're going to reap profits, but the decision puts you into a permanent state of conflict because you always have to worry about getting killed or about getting caught. You know, so even if you achieve the level of wealth that you're seeking, you've introduced a permanent quality of contentiousness in your house that is not going to be worth it. So first of all, does that example ring true to your idea?
Yeah.
Okay, so example is the mafia household. I'm not going to write it out. Okay, so now I'm going to just reverse engineer restatement of the idea. Okay, so the way I would say the idea, and I don't know if this is going to turn out different. To me, I'm thinking about the idea differently here. Is the Did you have a thing about the peace and the tranquility in the bread?
Yeah, that's like having it's in the bread, as in like you have the poor stuff, but you chose your people over it.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, fine. So I forgot to write that then. So the mafia household versus, I have to come up with a parallel example, but yeah, I'm not going to try reverse engineering the idea. Okay, so in contrast, if you choose a you know I mean, people use bread as livelihood, right? So like if you choose a livelihood with tranquility in it, okay, like for example, I feel like I just suddenly keep on hearing about the blue zones, you know, these places on Earth where like these people like live for a really long time, like in Okinawa and like in, I forgot if it was Sicily and like somewhere in South America, whatever. Like one of the things that they say is that the jobs that these people have are jobs like being fishermen or being farmers, where like it has a lot of physical work, but you are like, I don't know, like there's a lot of tasks that you can master, and like there's a lot of socialization and like a lot of things that like, you know, a peaceful existence built into the thing, where like a lot of meditative time, a lot of like, you know, so you're earning your living in a way where peace is like wrapped up in the way that you're in the quality of the bread that you're making. So if you do that, then you're going to have that tranquility as like a continual baseline, you know, accompanying whatever level of wealth you have. Okay, so yeah, I think this is a good idea. I think this is actually a new idea. Could we come up with I mean, I know I just came up with an example. Does anyone have an example that is as powerful as the mafia example, but for the first half? Like a livelihood that is a peaceful livelihood that actually introduces like a tangible quality of peace into your house. I don't know if there are jobs like this in America. I don't know.
What about the sushi guy?
Oh, Jiro Dreams of Sushi? Yeah, the only thing is like he's a taskmaster on himself, you know? And I think most chefs are like are real taskmasters. They're really driven. And I don't know if they have, and they also destroy their family lives. And I'm saying this based on experience of watching a lot of biographies of chefs. I think they all are miserable.
What about like drug dealing? Like that kind of, or like even let's say like growing like drugs or whatever it is that you're doing.
But that's, I'm looking for the bread, the peaceful example.
Oh, that is not the peaceful
No,
example.
no, yeah, yeah. I was like, Avital, you've changed. Yeah. Yeah, Shmuel.
An example for tranquility, I think, which is very, very American, is a truck driver.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I don't know from like hearing about like what their testimonies are, but like we'll say that, okay, is a truck driver. Oh, actually no, I met a Uber driver whose husband was a truck driver, and she said that I was like, oh, it must be hard to have like your husband like on the road for like weeks at a time. And she said, no, he does like local, like there's like a certain local delivery thing, and like he delivers stuff and then he comes home and like we have our home life, you know. So all right, that's fine. I'll do that. Yeah, truck driver. Okay. TBD whether this is statistically true. Uh, but I'm gonna go ahead and say like, or I'm gonna say like the stereotypical fisherman. Okay, I'll put that as a thing. Okay, not the industrial fisherman. Okay, but like the one who's like whatever. Okay, we'll at least fantasize about that. Okay. All right. So now let's do. Oh, by the way, oh no, forget it. Okay, let's go to whoever Marcia, Yitzi, or Avital.
Okay. What I was thinking of is it sounded like the beginning is written in the singular. So it sounded to me sort of like the unexamined life, like finding your own inner peace and within yourself and not spending too much time worrying about like what other people are arguing about. Sort of like the unexamined life is a simpler, easier life.
Okay, and the second half is I mean you're kind of implying it here, but
And the second half is like having contentious people around and stuff like that. Maybe to not get so involved with that and really work on your own inner peace, just your own simple piece of bread and your own simple shalva.
okay. Okay, so that is an example of an idea that we do see the meforshim say that for me at this stage is too metaphorical. But it's a good idea. And the challenge is going to be like this, is are we going to be able to see that idea in a more literal reading of the pasuk? And I have confidence that we can do that. Okay, so I want to hold on to this idea that like there is a more simple life. I don't want to say the unexamined life, and the reason why I don't want to say the unexamined life is because Mishlei is advocating for the examined life, and I don't think you meant the unexamined life in the way that like Plato said the unexamined life is not worth living. You meant unexamined in terms of like being involved in like all of the stuff that other people are like like some sort of like
aggravated or frustrated or
yeah, right,
discussing. Yeah,
right.
the hot topics.
Right, yeah, yeah. But it's a very interesting thing also because if you look at our tzaddikim, you know, our righteous people, they did take leadership positions and were involved in this other stuff because they did it for the good of society. And the Mishlei tzaddik is also involved in branching out and dealing with people who might not really be
But was that true for every man or for like the leaders?
it's true for the leaders, but it seems to be an ideal for the people who are trying to be the best that they can be. And you see, even for example, the Eshes Chayil at the end of Mishlei, she's not taking an official leadership position, but her position is very, very involved in lots and lots of people's lives, not just her household, but in her maidens and in the merchants and in the field owners and stuff. So it does seem like the Torah paradigm is not one of withdrawal. It's more one of being more involved in the world. So, and I'm not saying that challenges your idea. I'm saying that I'd like to see how what you're describing can be implemented even with lots and lots of people. You know, so there's more of a question for further analysis. But yeah, I think this idea it has potential, but it's too metaphorical for this stage for me. So I want to see if we can see it in more literal reading.
Okay, could I also say my
Yeah,
idea?
sure.
Okay, so I was kind of thinking of this pasuk as like almost like the dangers of becoming a workaholic and a statement kind of about like a little bread with like this sense of like peace almost replacing work, because I don't think like shalva is something that just comes like, oh, like either if I just buy a little bit of bread or like I think almost as a replacement for that, work is meaning like the work of buying like meat is like the work of shalva, and like let's say the house in the first part is not mentioned, this is touching on like one of the questions.
Yeah.
And bread is scarce in the first part, and it creates like time for the building of like tranquility within somebody's self because they're not taking all that time which they normally would have spent, whether because obviously like in the second scenario there's a house with meat, and like those things like meat is expensive or time consuming, or you have to like put a lot of effort into it, whatever it is. And in that way, when somebody's spending all of their like time, money, effort into something like that,
Yeah.
then like the result, I think here it's kind of like the result is this like contention or, like I don't know if I've ever heard it being like the opposite of shalva, but there's
Yeah.
like contentions when you don't look at your life and you don't evaluate things and you're kind of just working and working and in a way keeping up with the Joneses, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's what your life is kind of committed to. But it's kind of a
Okay.
warning against that. And I think it's very easy for life to become like that because of the world we live in, or naturally as society progresses, like it gets wealthier or whatever it is, and
Okay.
potentially more materialistic.
That's a great idea. Okay, I really like that idea a lot. And two examples came to my mind. One example is there's a guy in our yeshiva, Mark Solomon. He's actually Rabbi Mark Solomon, but like he doesn't like to be called rabbi. And when he was when he was very young, he or like in his college days, his family had a business. His dad had a business. I don't know what it was, but apparently like it was a very big like money making thing. And his dad wanted him to go into the business, but he wanted to learn. He wanted to learn Torah, and he wanted to make Torah learning a big part of his life. So what he did is he became a large appliance repairman. Okay, and he set up his life where every morning, and I've seen him now for like 23 years, but we're talking like decades before that. Every morning he goes to morning seder and shiur, and then he works for the rest of the he has to work a lot of hours for the rest of the day. But he built up this business, and then his sons are in this business now, and he's created a life where he devotes like 4 or 5 hours of his morning to learning and really cultivating his mind and his midos and everything like that. And he is giving up. Like I once heard him talk about his lifestyle. And he said, "Look, we have a small house. We don't eat fancy food. We go on one vacation a year. He has, I think, 6 kids who are all grown up now." And he said, "But we learn Torah. He said, I've paid for all 6 of my kids' private school education without ever accepting tuition assistance. And like he has a good, peaceful life. But if he had gone into this rat race, he might have made a lot of money, but he's not going to be devoting that time to cultivating himself. And you're right, it takes time and energy, to do each of these things, and you have a limited amount. So that's one example. And then the other example is a very, very small one. This is something I'm working on, is like I have a very fraught relationship with meditation. Okay. Like I really want to incorporate meditation into my day. The ideal thing is I want 20 minutes of meditation a day, 10 in the morning and 10 in the evening. But for the last like year and a half, I've been struggling to make it 10 minutes in the night. Okay. And it's a thing. It's like, it's very hard for me to set aside 10 minutes to just do nothing, because I have this thing of like, I need to like be like preparing shiur or whatever. But on some level, I recognize what Avital is saying is like, no, I need to invest the time to peace of mind. And that's going to pay off in terms of the quality of my life going on. So that's like a much more smaller case thing. Okay. So Avital, I'm not saying this to the exclusion of everyone else. This satisfies what I wanted for the night. Okay, this is a new idea for me, so I'm happy that you got that idea there. And if we get more, then it's just bonus. Okay, is there another thing from Yitzi, or is that it for the that group?
I think that's it.
Okay, no pressure, Yitzi. Okay, Shmuel.
Great, thanks, Rabbi. I like other ideas, and I had the opportunity to listen to everyone and what they had to say, and I want to incorporate a little bit of everything into my idea.
Okay.
And I think that this pasuk is really talking about lifestyle decisions, when it comes to making a lifestyle decision.
Mhm.
What I think the bread, the stale bread, the plain bread, however you want to, ungarnished, dry,
Yeah.
stale and dry seems similar. Um, I think that is very much minimalist. No additives, very natural state, very uninterrupted, uninfluenced. That's not a good word. But I think the point comes across. And
You mean
that's a
when you
life.
say minimalist, you mean like nothing excess or extra?
Nothing, no outside influence really.
Okay.
From beginning to end, when it comes to bread, the entire
Okay.
process is natural. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, literally.
Yeah.
Um, and and to juxtapose that with and so that's minimalist, and that brings, there's no outside forces. Peaceful, I guess, would be a way to describe that. And to juxtapose that with a house, which is interesting, it brings a house. I think a house is meant as a facilitator for the meat, which is a much fancier, much more complicated dish to make. You can't eat meat raw. You'd have to cook it. You have to use other spices.
Yeah.
And all of these different additives, and the lifestyle with additives can create contention. And the fancier you get, which is why I wanted to incorporate, wealth or working hard, workaholic, um, fancier you get, the more complicated life becomes.
Okay. So my thoughts on that are I'll tell you where I do agree with it, and then I want to ask you what you're saying more than that, because that's where I either disagree or I don't understand. Okay. I do think that the more how would I say it? Luxurious isn't really the okay. There was an article in, I don't know if it was in the Free Press or the Atlantic, about how Americans don't like going to Europe because during the summer, because there's not a lot of air conditioning. Okay. Um, and we've become accustomed to air conditioning. And then I heard a separate podcast about the invention of air conditioning. And basically I didn't know this, but the first, anyone know where the first place where air conditioning was used in and why? Like we think of it as like a luxury, but anyone know? So it was invented for factories because factories used to have to shut down in the summer, not because it was too hot for the workers, because they didn't care about workers, they could die, right? But it would mess up the machinery. It would be so hot and humid that it would mess up the machinery. So the guy who invented air conditioning introduced it to factories, and it allowed it allowed the factories to be operating all summer, and factories used to have to close. Then what happened was it went to movie theaters, okay, because Hollywood used to have to shut down during the summer because people wouldn't go to movie theaters because it'd be too hot there. So then they created this thing where like people would go to movies. And then here's the part that's astonishing. They couldn't sell air conditioning to private individuals because people could not get their head around the idea that they could make their homes cool. So it wasn't even appealing because they couldn't conceive of it being like a reality. Like, oh, I could not be hot during the summer. Okay, so now fast forward to we have air conditioning in our homes. Now we freak out and we complain if it's not cool enough. And so it's something like above and beyond that we view as a luxury and a bonus. But with every luxury that you introduce, you're complicating your life, you're creating more needs, you're creating more gradations of, am I like unhappy, happy, kind of complaining, like you're creating all this stuff. Whereas the life without these additional complications, it just lends itself to a more meetable standard of happiness. No pun intended. So that's one thing I'm hearing from what you're saying. But are you saying something else because I hear you talking about outside influences and outside processes. So that makes me feel like I'm missing something in your idea. Is it just about the complications and the fanciness, or is it about Davka like outside versus, what you could do on it on your own? Like that's what I'm missing.
I think what I mean by outside influences, Rabbi, is it's the crux of the contention thing, um, which is the more opinions or voices or things that you have to deliberate with, the harder it is to make a decision, and the more uneasy you're gonna be.
Okay.
I'll give an example about that. Um, I'm big into country music, and in country music, you hear them. They outline how they live their life, and they glorify it, and they love it. This is their culture, which is ranch, farm, basics. You
Mhm.
know, um, and then and it's the same thing over and over again every week, where they have a very, very minimalist lifestyle
Right.
with very little outside influence, and they say, if you don't
Right.
like country, we don't care, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I over-explained.
Okay, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I like your idea. I still think what I'm struggling for here is the unity. And I don't know if there are multiple ideas in what you're saying, but I do like the idea. My takeaway from your idea is the complexities making tranquility harder to achieve. So let's sit with this for a little while. So here's what I want to do. Okay, I'm going to call in Rifki, Ariel, Yair. Then I want to share my idea, and then I want to check out a couple of mefarshim. The way that the end time of shiur works is I do want to aim for ending at 8:30. I'm fine continuing on, but I don't want to hold people hostage. Okay, so let's hopefully you guys have quick ideas here, because at least Rifki hasn't said anything yet, but Ariel and Yair have already said stuff. So hopefully you're quick. Yeah, Rifki.
Okay, so this is not what you were probably going to say. So
Okay.
that's number one. And I'm curious what you were going to think about it, because I'm like still kind of toying. Like, do I like this as an idea, or am I just trying to come up with a credit?
Okay.
So I was thinking, like, I know he uses the word tov, as Yitzi was saying, like it's a general thing that he says in pesukim to connotate an idea. But I wanted to suggest maybe, again, I'm thinking about that middleman. So I was
Oh
thinking,
no.
no, you can't hear
Did we
me.
lose you or did we lose me?
I don't
I
know.
think we
Can
lost
everyone
me.
hear? Are you
Oh,
back?
I can hear you. I think everyone else froze, so I think it was me. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You're so far good with what I said?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So I was just saying, I was very introductory, just that I know that in general, that like Yitzi was saying, that Tov is something that Shlomo says in order to like explain the extremes, that it's better to have this than this. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we can use that lashon to understand. I'm still thinking about that middleman. That's what kind of has been going on in my head. So maybe we can say that obviously we know that the extremes, both extremes are, in extreme cases. So we have it's better to have, schwach bread than it is to have yummy, good meat, but you're not going to enjoy that meat because of whatever state that you're in that's a negative state. So I wanted to say maybe like kind of a middle thing, because I was also thinking about Shlomo's life, and like we know, like that's literally Kohelet. We know that he had extravagant, great things. He was the king. That's why, it's
Yeah.
Kohelet and the king of Israel. So I was saying maybe like kind of like a modern Orthodox approach, that like the best would to be like, okay, like you're working on yourself, you're working to make sure that you don't have strife in your home, and that you're a positive person that brings positivity and peace to your household and to the people around you. And that with that you can also have the positive, like yummy food. So yeah, I'm not sure what you think about that idea, but
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Shlomo HaMelech and Koheles, because that I think corresponds to stage 3 of his experiment.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, right. So yeah, that was I'm just not going to read the whole experiment because it's also the longest phase. But in phase 3 of his experiment, he says, "Tarti ani limshoch as." So stage 2 was the party stage, and that didn't work out for him. Yeah, then Tarti limshoch bayan es basari. I explore with my heart to draw my flesh after wine, but vilibi noheg bachachma, but my heart conducted itself with chachma. And then it seems like he is trying to have like both, Yeah. So I think what I don't like about the idea, I mean, of course I agree that balance is good, but I don't see the pasuk advocating for the balance. It sounds like it's advocating for the first half, you know?
So I guess that's what I was trying to add, which is I see why you don't like that, but what I
Yeah.
don't like about, and this is what I guess you were saying earlier, that like you don't have to like the pasuk to understand an idea from it.
Yeah.
But what was bothering me was that there wasn't a blend between the two. Like personally, like I wouldn't want to
Right.
live a life of the first half only. Like that
Right.
doesn't sound appealing to me.
Yeah. So that part I'm sympathetic to, which is that he's not necessarily saying that everyone should live a life of dry bread, because look, there are pesukim in Mishlei about making money, right? Lots of pesukim about making money. Like that's arguably one of the purposes of the book, to show that you can make money with chachma. and then enjoy a good life, right? So I agree with you that he's not advocating an ascetic lifestyle, and I like that that's pushing your reading of the pasuk. I just think it's pushing it to a point where I don't agree that that's the implication, but I like the maneuver though. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a new idea or an add-on to what I said before, but it's another couple of things that I wanted to note was it's interesting that like normally food is supposed to be something that's supposed to unify people. And it's
Yeah.
not supposed to be like, like you break bread, get to know each other, yada yada, whatever, all that good
Yeah.
stuff. That's like one point I wanted to mention. I'm not sure how that adds to anything, but the second point I wanted to mention was that it's interesting. Maybe maybe you could say that having having more of like an abundance, while I guess there's already tension, can just add more strife to the relationship or to the household.
Okay, that's a good point.
I don't know. I don't know if that will add to my idea, and I can't really like prove it from the pasuk, like because I don't know if the abundance causes the strife or if there already has to be strife, and the
No,
abundance
yeah,
just qualifies it.
right.
And I
I
don't
think it.
really even know what the opposite of it would be with the
Yeah.
half bread. I'm not sure.
So no, I think you're right, and I'm not going to try to prove it because I also don't know if I could prove it. But I will show you that Chazal hold that in Pirkei Avos. I think it's in. Let's see if I can get this right. No, that's not how you spell it. Marbe. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Marbe. Yeah. Huaya Omer. I don't know who this is. This is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. No, Rabbi Gamliel. Marbe Nechasi Marbe Da'aga. One who increases possessions increases worry. So there definitely is something that happens when you increase your possessions. I mean, we can theorize about it, right? I think it is a good move that the excess, in other words, the excess can actually bring strife into the household when it didn't exist. Okay, and the
Right,
question is how, but I don't want to delve into that too much right now.
right. It
Yeah,
reminds me of Abraham and Lot a little bit,
yeah,
but
right. That's a good example. Yeah, yeah, you're
Okay, there. So this is another very, very simple one. I'm just kind of saying it kind of
sure.
literally. And if anyone knows for a fact that I'm wrong, please call me out on this. But I'm
Okay.
gonna say I think more people have died on choking on meat than on bread.
Okay.
And I think it might have been more a problem back in the day, but I remember learning something about like Rashi was saying you should make sure to say a bracha in case you choke and die. There's I've I think choking on bread is more likely. No, sorry, no. Choking
On
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 meat
meat,
is
yeah.
more likely. Yeah. And so that's my main thing. I can kind of work in the other stuff,
Okay.
but that was my main
Can I
thought.
let me just extend it, I think, in a way that is good. Fancier foods do I guess come with more things that can kill you than simpler foods. I think that's like take meat, like I mean, just take the spoilage factor in meat, which back before refrigeration, that was a thing where like, meat didn't last very long, and I'm sure people tried to get as most out of it as they could. You could die, like whereas how many times does bread kill people, and I'm not talking about celiac.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think
And
that
this
that's
is where
like
I'll
and the extreme cases of this, I mean, I think the extreme, this is too extreme, but like there's that Japanese what is it? The fish that like you need to be a special thing because if you don't prepare, you need to be a special chef because if you don't prepare properly, it kills you. And like these people will like go out of the way to like eat it. It's just like I don't know, it's crazy. So yeah, that's see that's the type of thing I've talking about like radical like literal meaning. I approve of the move, even if I don't think that that's the necessarily the shot. Okay, last one from the Avital crew.
Yeah, just two quick points. Number one is in support of Avital's idea and potentially part of what Ariel was saying.
Yeah,
When we're talking about the shalva and the riv, it's not something that's coming from the people. It's the way it's phrased is it's like intrinsic in the bread or it's
right.
intrinsic in the meat itself. So it makes a lot of sense to say that it's the
Yeah.
person working for it that like makes that intrinsic, or it's the
Okay,
having
I like
it
that point. That's a
causes
good.
the thing itself rather than being something external in the person.
Yeah. All right, good. That's a good literary point. Yeah.
And the second point is that with like bread in a home, like the purpose of it is to bring like comfort and nourishment and that sort of thing. So when we say like tov in terms of better, it's better for that purpose. I think part of what it's saying, it's also kind of building on those two previous ideas, that the bread itself or the food itself or the house itself is going to provide more nourishment and comfort from it being the shalva versus being beriv, meaning in terms of what it's actually supplying to the person in that sense, even though like a person may think, oh, the food will be better, I'll enjoy it more in terms of providing the nourishment.
Okay.
And the chariva is going to be better.
Okay, good. So my idea is a combination of Ariel's first idea and then Yitzi's reading of this. Okay, so I'm gonna say my idea and then I'll write it out. Okay, so I'm approaching this with the awareness that Mishlei Sadigon says that the purpose of Mishlei is to teach you how to make decisions that maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Okay, now Judaism is not a hedonistic religion. We do hold that there's a higher purpose than pleasure and pain, but Mishlei is training you to attach yourself to Chachma by making decisions that maximize your pleasure and minimize your pain, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants. And if you keep on doing that with Mishlei, then you start getting attached to Chachma, then you're ready to apply Chachma to areas that actually matter, okay? But having said that, what does it mean that bread, a piece of dry bread with tranquility in is better in what sense? So I want to say it tastes better, okay? And my idea from the pasuk is the havamina, like what you might think is that the quality and quantity of pleasure in your life is going to be dictated by the quality and quantity of the physical pleasure, right? So dry piece of stale bread is inferior quantity and inferior quality, and a house filled with meat is superior quality, meat as opposed to bread, and superior quantity, which is a whole house filled with it. Okay, that's what you might think. But what the pasuk is telling you is, and this is the big thing, physical enjoyments are dependent on psychological states. Okay, we know that psychological enjoyments, depend on your state of mind. But what this is telling you is that your ability to enjoy the physical pleasures in your life, and by physical pleasures, I don't just mean eating. I mean like a comfortable bed. I mean like, a nice house. I know that there's a line between like physical and psychological. I'm saying like to enjoy the physical things in your life, whether it's food or objects, is contingent on your psychological state. So when it's saying that the bread is better, it means that if you have a state of peace of mind, and I'm not taking a stance on whether this means internal peace or peace with the people around you. I happen to think it's the people around you because of the household. You will enjoy the pleasures of life more than if you have contention in your life and you have the best stuff. And if you think this is obvious, look at all the people who make this mistake by devoting their whole lives to amassing amounts of money and then not caring about their relationship with their spouse or their kids or whatever, and then they get into fights, or they have a contentious business life, or like Avital was saying, is that they're workaholics. Anything that introduces psychological strife or conflict into your life is going to impair your ability to enjoy the things that you've worked so hard to get. So this is a combination of, just to go back to Ariel's idea was that people are striving for a psychological shalva, and I agree with that, but I'm saying that this pasuk is about people want pleasure from the physical things in their lives, but they think it comes from the physical things. And the answer is no, it comes from or at least it is affected by your mental state, And I'm not going to try to do this now because it's annoying to find it, but whenever I taught this in high school, I don't know if you remember this, I would show a scene from the movie Signs, which is a M. Night Shyamalan movie, and it's an alien movie. And basically, there's this scene where Mel Gibson is playing this father who is like an ex pastor or like ex-religious person, and he's very bitter because his wife died, and he like hates God because of it. So there's this scene where like they decide to have this family meal where they can have whatever they want. and then one of his kids asks if he could say a prayer, and like he has this whole like anger at God moment where like he just like lashes out, and then they're all eating their favorite foods, but he's clearly not enjoying it because he's like like in a state of like extreme anguish. And like to me, that's like the quintessential depiction of the second half of this, is that you can have the most luxuriant meal, but if you're in a psychological state of quarrel, you're not going to enjoy it. And I think we've all experienced this. Like I'm sure we've all had times when we're sad or depressed or angry, and you're eating something that you should enjoy or usually enjoy, and you're not enjoying it. But Mishlei, I think this is where what Shmuel said comes in, and Avital also, is that this is really talking about how you set up your lifestyle. You don't. It's not talking about like when you sit down to eat this meal. It's saying if you want to make a lot of money so you can have things to enjoy them, think about the psychological state that your lifestyle is going to bring you into, and ask yourself, are you going to be able to enjoy it, or are you going to be creating so much stress for yourself that you're not going to be able to enjoy the physical stuff? Okay, that's my idea. Okay, I'll write it later because I already have it written. I'm doing it for my own records. Okay, let's quickly look at a couple of mefarshim here, and then we'll call it a night. Okay, let's do Metzus David, Rabbeinu Yonah, and there's one actually. No, I'm gonna. Okay, let's start with. No, I don't want to do that. Let's look at. Oh, so this is an interesting one. Tell me if you think that he's saying something that we've already said, okay? And I forgot if I translated. No, ChatGPT translated this, so I'm going to go ahead and translate it. Gam ze al b'chiras hashalom. This is also talking about choosing peace. Now, quick methodology point. The chapters were invented by the Christians, right? So the chapter divisions are not significant for us. So if you look at the pasuk that we did before this in May or June, the last pasuk in chapter 16, it's about peace. It's about using a lottery in order to achieve a peaceful like outcome. Okay, so that's where he's getting this from. He says this is also about choosing peace. That a person that a person should not strive to overpower his brothers in getting the inheritance. Kitov hamuat below riv v'ir or min hamruba ba'alav mato meriva. Better a little bit without conflict than strife over an excess amount. V'alav mato meriva, with a lot of contention and quarrel over it. V'chein im noshim ba'adam v'rosim ligbos min nechasav. So too if what's the word? Creditors pressure a person and try to collect from his property. Al yishtadal his gaber v'lidchosam b'choach yado. Don't try to push them aside with your hand. Kitov hama'at shisharlo below, or better for you to remain with a little bit without contention. I don't know what kind of creditor he's talking about here. Maybe this is not crediting. Maybe there's some financial term here that we don't understand. And he'll find more pleasure in it than nachas ruach mibais mali zivchei riv. Okay, maybe a better example would be like sometimes I know there's two different personalities. Okay, let's say you get a ticket. And there are people who will go and fight in court for it for like, $65. And look, if you need that $65, great. I'm of the opinion it is just not worth my time to invest the time and the energy and then to work myself up for like, why did I get this? Just pay it off and be done with it. Like that's my thing. And regarding the first example, I'm sure you can find many examples of families that have been torn apart by fighting over the inheritance, and he's saying like, is it really going to be worth it to destroy all the relationships in your life to get more money? No, better to have like the little amount and preserve those relationships. Uba Shlomo olav shalom limshoch deos b'nei adam lebechiras shalom mitzad hanacha hanimtzas hanacha. I don't know if that's a typo. Hanimtzas bo. Shlomo's coming to draw people to choose peace because of the restfulness that is in it. No, restfulness, that's a bad word. Oh, that's what ChatGPT says. The natural sense of restfulness in it. Lateva, the natural sense of rest in it. Milvad mashi shihus harnu milachmos litzkov benachala below mishpat. In addition to warning people against doing violence and seizing inheritance unjustly. Vitachin ki diber al sheva hamosar mishalo lasalik iur midchaz. Okay, fine. So what's interesting about Rabbeinu Yonah is he says it's not about enjoyment. It's about being content with less rather than bringing interpersonal quarrel into something. Okay, and so what's the chiddush here? That's what I want to try to get here. What is the chiddush? What's the new insight? I'll summarize it again one more time, right? So the summary is it's better to give up a larger amount of money if that would introduce great interpersonal conflict into your life. It's not worth it. Yeah, Shmuel.
The chidush is not that you're attaining something extra, it's that something that already exists that you're letting go.
Okay, that's good. That's good, right? So in other words, there is a natural state of tranquility, i.e., freedom, freedom from this level of constant strife, okay, that you are preserving by not entering, by not trying to seize more. Yeah, okay, that's a good way to put it, right? In other words, and I think that's the mistake. That is the mistake people make, is they think to themselves, this is my chance to make it big and to get a lot, and they don't realize that they're going to be permanently introducing this quality of strife into their life by trying to do this. You know, lawsuits are another thing like this, right? It's like people become embroiled in lawsuits that just eat up years of their life. You know, and let's say they win. Let's say they get $1 million. Like, was it really worth, you know, getting your name splashed all in the papers for being like petty about this, or like just bringing all these stress into your life? Okay, I want to read one that I found that was interesting, that is suiting what Shlomo said about the whole thing being completely internal. So this is a new commentator. I'll tell you about him later, Zerach Yachin. Okay, some of you have already heard me talk about him with Eov. He says like this: K'moshe Amru Zal, Ezehu Asher Hasmech B'chalko. Okay, so by the way, applause for everyone. No one invoked this Chazal. Who is wealthy? He says, like Chazal say, who is wealthy? One who is content. Content with his portion. Okay. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but literally every time I've taught this pasuk, someone always says, "This is teaching us Ezehu Asher Hasmeach B'chalko." And then I say, well, then why does Shlomo need to say it? Like, if it's so obvious, you know? And then we have a dead end there. Okay, so but then he does give us something. Ve'eno rachok lefarish. It's not improbable to explain. Okay, and this is the closest to what Yair said, even though it's not exactly. Tov pas hareva im habrius. Better a dry piece of bread with health, mizvachim ne'achalos im riv haguf, than meat eaten with strife in the body. Okay, klomar, meaning to say, ne'edar habrius, lack of health. K'moshe amar hamashal, as the proverb says. Okay, I looked this up and it says it's from Shlomo ibn Gavirol. In osher kabrius, there's no, and this works out better in English than Hebrew. There's no wealth like health. Okay, so what he's saying is, he says this might just be about eating healthy. Okay, that if you eat a healthy diet, your body is going to be free from all of the contentiousness that comes from diseases and health problems. So maybe you have to eat simple food, but you're going to be saving yourself a lot of stress from all of the health stuff that's going to happen. And maybe that's the real wealth. So that reminded me of what Shlomo said, because this is totally solitary. This is not talking about fighting with other people. Okay. All right, there's more ideas here, but I think this is a good haul for our first Mishlei of the year. So let's do a quick review and then we'll stop. So our ideas were, we had Ariel saying that this is about people using their wealth and their luxuries to try to achieve shalva, some sort of psychological tranquility. But if you're going to undermine it with the quarreling in your house, or if the excess itself is going to generate that quarreling or that strife, you're just going to undermine the whole reason why you're trying to get the wealth. So better to content yourself with the shalva. Yair, I'm going to skip the first Yair idea. Isaiah was saying that if the track you put yourself on is going to introduce contentiousness into your house to get your livelihood, that's always going to be there, and it's always going to be a source of contentiousness, and you're not going to be able to get out of it. Whereas if you hitch your livelihood wagon to something that is a peaceful livelihood, like we're positing as the fisherman, then you're going to have that as your baseline. So we didn't actually circle around to what Marcia said, but about that it's representative of a certain uncomplicated life that's free from the dramas and problems caused by other people or worrying about what other people think. I still think that idea has potential, but we didn't get a chance to come back to it. Avital's idea is the idea that I'm going to walk away with here is that you can choose to invest your limited time and energy into making more money, which will also produce more stress and also deprive you of the ability to work on your inner life. Or you could devote it to your inner life and achieve that peace of mind and give up some of the luxuries, but you'll have that peace of mind. So I really, really like that idea. Shmuel's idea has to do with a sort of minimalist lifestyle that is not overcomplicated by outside factors or other opinions. We didn't quite pin down what that is. I do sense there's something here, but to me, the essence of that idea lies in introducing complications into your life that actually make you have to jump through more hoops to get to happiness or tranquility. Rifki's idea had potential, which is that that Shlomo's not advocating for the ascetic life, but he is pointing to the extreme because there's something that is beneficial that you can adapt to a more material-filled lifestyle. Yair had this idea of you die from choking on meat more than on bread, which I expanded into the idea that fancier foods do create more risks and health problems than the simpler foods. And I think that is truth. And Yitzi had this idea about how you're going to get more out of what the house and the bread are supposed to supply, which is, the shelter, comfort, and then the nutrition through shalva than through something that brings strife. And then there's my idea about you're going to get your physical pleasures are contingent on your psychological state. So you'll enjoy your physical life more if you have peace in your life than if you have contention. Then we had Rabbeinu Yonah's idea about it's not worth trying to get extra money if you're going to introduce strife into your life. And then you have the Zerach Yachin's idea about there's no health like wealth. Okay, that was a lot of ideas. All right. And next week we have the same challenge because this is an idea that I've taught a lot. So, but judging by tonight, we're going to have a pretty good chance of getting chidushim. So thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to learning this parak with you guys this year, whenever you can make it. Remember, Mishlei is a different pasuk each week, and they're not related. So if you feel like skipping a week or you can't make it, then you could always join the next week. Okay, thanks for coming. Have a good night.
Do you mind
Thanks,
sending
Rabbi. Take care.
write-up you
Bye.
have for your own?
Sorry, what was that, Rifki?
Do you mind just sending the write-up you have from like the years that you've taught? I just want to actually write it in my.
Yeah, sure. Let me just actually, I'll find it in my notes and I'll post it in the Mishlei crew chat.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.